So that's DMA's. Oh, here I am trying to. There we go. Okay, so in addition to talking to stations and networks, and you're obviously thinking about, of course, geography and day parts. How are you going to reach your target? When are they watching TV? What kinds of programs are they watching? And these are some choices of programming from your book. And you'll notice the children's programs up on top. Interesting animation on the weekends, right? Quite a lot. That's been going on for a long time. Anyway, based on the time of day and the type of programming, this helps you reach your target the best way. And here are the day parts. Got your early morning, day, when, of course, in the old days it was, well, even still, it's people who are staying at home primarily doing the watching. Early fringe as we come up to prime time. Early news, that's when a lot of the local programming takes place. Local programming is usually the early morning sort of local news shows that run before Good Morning America starts. And early news is another key spot for local programming, local news. Got your prime access, which is usually news, and then your prime time, which is when you have your highest viewership, and et cetera, et cetera. So, day parts. Another consideration I think that's really worth a little bit of time to highlight is where exactly in the programming, within the programming, or between the programs is your particular ad going to run. And so placing your spot, there's a big spot in the pod. And a pod is what we call all the spots together. So, you don't just see one ad when the commercials start. You usually see a few. And we also know, and your book underlines, that more and more ad time is being included in TV shows, and this means more commercials. This means more clutter, and it's harder for your spot to stand out. So, you've got to think about this. Typically, when you negotiate, you're just going to be on the show in a certain 15-minute time block. But the more you think about where you're going to be the most effective, where you're going to be noticed the most, given all the clutter going on with television these days, that's just smart. But also recognize that whenever you ask for certain inventory, you ask to be aired at a certain time. You just think about the Super Bowl. What are the best places to be advertising in the Super Bowl? Lots of times, if you're in the fourth quarter and it's a bad game and people leave the game, you're going to lose ratings, for instance. So you want to be first. Do you want to be first in the pod? Now, there is research on this. I think a lot of it's proprietary. It's not shared by a lot of people. But one of the dangers with TV, and your textbook writer points this out, is that it's, with a bunch of commercials sort of running by, it's easy for it all just to be kind of blended and for none of them to really grab you very much, particularly if you get up during the commercial pod to go do something else. So to be really smart about TV, in my view and the view of many others, you need to be smart about figuring out where you want to be in the program and in the pod, and then trying to negotiate for that. So let's talk a little bit about ratings now. We talked about radio ratings. And Nielsen does the TV ratings too. There are some other people getting into it, but they're doing it now. The way they did it for many, many years is that they asked, they would choose families, households, in different areas, different geographies, obviously, and such that they would have a big enough sample size, but the families would have to fill in diaries about what the TV was tuned to all the time and who was watching. And families were paid a little bit, not too much. And now Nielsen is putting devices on the TV set which track what the TV's tuned to. And the only thing is that individual who's watching needs to be recorded too. So there's a way to press different buttons and things based on whether Junior's watching or Mom's watching or whoever's watching. And there is some use of people meters, particularly in terms of capturing watching on mobile phones and different devices, which Nielsen is doing more and more of. So that's the way Nielsen is gathering information, and they have to have big enough sample sizes to address different demographic groups too that advertisers are interested in, by the way. So they added viewership for up to 5 days after airing in 2016, given that people were recording things, etc. So I went to their website and I pulled a couple of screenshots to kind of get into this a little bit more. So they pick a county, right, within a state. Within the county, a group of block areas are chosen to try to be geographically diverse. And then homes within the block area are contacted to participate as Nielsen families. So this is how they build their samples. Now I've got a couple of videos to show you from the Nielsen site. So I'm going to stop here and load in these videos for you to look at from Nielsen about how they gather ratings.